Here is a question that should disturb you. What if everything you've been told about productivity is slowly destroying the very instrument you rely on to be productive? You were told to grind harder, to optimize every hour, to treat sleep as a luxury and rest as a reward earned only after the work is done. And the world applauded you for it. But here is what the neuroscience is quietly, patiently telling us. The harder you push without rest, the less you actually produce. This is not philosophy. This is physics. This is what economists call the law of diminishing returns, the principle that beyond a certain threshold, each additional unit of input yields progressively less output. And it applies to your brain with devastating precision. Study after study confirms it. Researchers at Stanford found that productivity per hour begins to collapse after 50 hours of work per week. After 55 hours, it falls off a cliff. You are essentially working and achieving nothing. You are pouring energy into a container that has stopped holding anything. And yet, we keep pouring. What ancient wisdom understood thousands of years before the neuroscientists arrived, and what we are only now beginning to prove in our laboratories, is that the solution was never to work less poorly. It was to stop, completely, deliberately, sacredly. Let's go inside the brain. Your prefrontal cortex is your executive center. It handles reasoning, judgment, impulse control, strategic thinking. It is, in every meaningful sense, the seat of your highest human capacities. And it has a fatal vulnerability. It runs on a finite fuel supply. When you sustain cognitive effort without adequate restoration, a molecule called adenosine accumulates in your neural tissue. Think of it as metabolic exhaust, a biochemical signal of depletion. It is why your thinking slows, why decisions that should be obvious suddenly feel impossibly complex. Simultaneously, your adrenal glands are flooding your system with cortisol, the primary stress hormone. Cortisol has its place. In acute bursts, it sharpens focus and primes the body for action. But in chronic elevation, it is a slow poison. It clouds judgment. It amplifies emotional reactivity. It literally degrades the hippocampus, the brain region responsible for memory consolidation and learning. Neuroscientists call this decision fatigue, the documented deterioration in the quality of choices made after sustained periods of mental exertion. It is why judges hand down harsher sentences in the afternoon, why surgeons make more errors at the end of a long shift, why you order the wrong thing for dinner on Thursday night. Here is the brutal irony. The more decisions you make without rest, the less qualified you become to make the next one. You are not tired because you are weak. You are tired because you are human. And your brain is sending you a very ancient message. Now, let us travel back approximately 3,000 years into a culture that had no neuroscience, no cortisol studies, no prefrontal cortex imaging. And yet, embedded in their most sacred text was a principle of rest so architecturally precise, so biologically intelligent, that modern science is still catching up to it. The concept of Shabbat, the Sabbath. One complete day in 7. Not a suggestion, not a reward for hitting your quarterly targets, a command, a structural feature of human existence baked into the fabric of creation itself. And then, Jesus, in a moment of radical theological clarity, said something that reorients the entire conversation. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Read that again slowly. The Sabbath was made for man, not to constrain him, not to test his obedience, but as a gift,
a biological and spiritual necessity built into the human operating system before the human even knew he needed it. This is the insight that took neuroscience millennia to rediscover. Rest is not the prize at the end of good work. Rest is the precondition for good work. The ancient Hebrew word for the Sabbath is rooted in shavat, to cease, to desist, to stop. Not to merely slow down, not to switch tasks, to stop completely. To create what the theologian Abraham Joshua Heschel called a sanctuary in time, a sacred architecture of cessation built into every 7 days. Not a pause in the rhythm itself.
Now, back to the laboratory. When neuroscientists began studying what the brain does during genuine rest, not sleep, but wakeful, non-task states, they discovered something extraordinary. The brain doesn't go quiet. It shifts modes. What activates during true rest is now called the default mode network, a constellation of brain regions, the medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate, the angular gyrus, that light up precisely when your task-focused executive brain power's down. And what does the default mode network do? It processes, it integrates, it solves. The default mode network is where your brain takes the fragmented raw data of your conscious experience and weaves it into meaning. It is where disparate ideas held in different neural compartments all week finally find each other. It is the biological substrate of what we call insight, that sudden, unprovoked clarity, the idea that arrives in the shower, the solution that appears on a Sunday morning walk. Archimedes was not in a meeting when he discovered displacement. Newton was not at his desk when the apple fell. The great leaps of understanding have always arrived not during the work, but after the work, in the space the work carved open. This is not coincidence. This is neural architecture. When you never stop, when you fill every silence with a podcast, every gap with a scroll, every transition with a notification, you are jamming the signal. You are preventing the most sophisticated information processing system in the known universe from doing its deepest work. The Sabbath, understood neurologically, is a scheduled activation of the default mode network. It is the weekly clearing of the mental cache, neural restoration at its most fundamental. Let us be precise about something, because the modern mind is very skilled at disguising distraction as rest. Scrolling TikTok is not rest. Watching 3 hours of Netflix is not rest. These activities are not without value, but they are not Sabbath. They are what cognitive scientists call passive consumption, low effort, high stimulation input that keeps the brain's dopamine system artificially activated while providing zero opportunity for genuine neural integration. They are noise wearing the costume of silence. True divine rest, the kind that produces the neurological and spiritual renewal the Sabbath was designed for, requires something that our culture has made almost unbearably difficult. Total digital disengagement, no notifications, no news cycle, no social performance, no optimization. What fills that space? Relationship, reflection, silence, worship, nature, the unhurried presence of people you love in the absence of every device designed to pull your attention somewhere more monetizable. This is not primitive. This is the most advanced cognitive protocol available to a human being in the 21st century. The Sabbath is not a relic of a pre-industrial world. It is the most radical act available to a person in a culture addicted to speed.
It is the declaration, made once every 7 days, in the face of every notification and demand and obligation, that your worth is not determined by your output, that you were made for more than your output, that the best thing you can do for your work, your creativity, your family, your God, is to stop. Not someday, not after you close the deal, hit the milestone, finish the project. Now, this week. So here is your invitation, what I call the wisdom walk. This coming Sabbath, set down your devices 24 hours before you pick them up again. Walk, sit in the quiet. Let your default mode network do what it was designed to do. Let your dopamine system recalibrate. Let the sacred rhythm your ancestors encoded into the fabric of time do its restorative, ancient, biologically sophisticated work. In a world that cannot stop, stopping is the final act of courage, and the most productive thing you will ever do.